In the earliest hours of Valentine's Day 2013, in the Silver Woods Country Estate, a gated community of manicured lawns and high walls in Pretoria, the silence was shattered by 4 sharp gunshots. Minutes later came the thud of a cricket bat against a wooden door. Then a man's anguished screams. By the time paramedics arrived, Riva Steenkamp, a 29-year-old law graduate, model, and passionate advocate against domestic abuse, was dead, shot through a locked toilet door. The man who had pulled the trigger was her boyfriend, Oscar Pistorius, the double amputee sprinter known as the Blade Runner, an athlete who had redefined the limits of human possibility. His story, once a soaring anthem of triumph over adversity, became in that moment a dark and complicated tragedy that would transfix South Africa and the world. To grasp the magnitude of Pistorius's fall, you must first understand the legend that preceded it. Born in Johannesburg in 1986, without fibulas in both legs, his parents made the agonizing choice to amputate his lower limbs before his first birthday so he might learn to walk on prosthetics. His mother, Sheila, instilled in him a fierce refusal to be defined by limitation. She famously told him, "A loser is not one who enters last, but the one who sits and watches and has never even entered." He took those words and ran with them, literally. Fitted with J-shaped carbon fiber blades, he exploded onto the world stage. At 17, he won gold at the Athens Paralympics. But his ambition refused to be boxed into parasport. He wanted to compete against the best able-bodied runners in the world. After a protracted legal and scientific battle, he won the right to race at the London 2012 Olympics, where he made history as the first double amputee to compete in an Olympic track event, reaching the semifinals of the 400 meters. He was celebrated as a global icon of resilience, a man who had bent physics and biology to his will. Sponsors clamored for his image. He was South Africa's golden boy. But even then, the golden image had cracks. Pistorius was famously reckless with firearms, once accidentally discharging a friend's pistol under a restaurant table, and on another occasion, firing a gun through the sunroof of a moving car. He lived in a state of paranoid vigilance, his mansion a fortress equipped with panic buttons and loaded weapons, his psyche haunted by a very real South African nightmare, the violent home invasion. His disability amplified this vulnerability. Without his prosthetic legs, he said, he felt like a child cornered in the dark. On the night of February 13th, Riva Steenkamp arrived at his home carrying a Valentine's Day gift, a framed collage of photographs and a card she planned to open together the next morning. The two had been dating for a few months, a whirlwind romance that friends described as intense and sometimes fraught. In the quiet of the evening, they ate dinner and watched a movie. What happened after, when the lights went out and the bedroom door closed, became the subject of a legal and moral contest that tore a nation apart. Pistorius's version was one of terror and tragic error. He said he woke in the early hours, sweltering in the summer heat, and moved to bring in fans from the balcony. Then he heard a noise from the ensuite bathroom, a window sliding open. An intruder, he was certain. Without his legs, naked on his stumps, he grabbed his licensed 9mm pistol and hobbled down the dark passage. At the closed toilet door, he fired 4 black Talon hollow-point bullets, ammunition designed to mushroom inside flesh and inflict catastrophic damage. Only after he had emptied his magazine did a horrific thought crystallize. Riva was not in the bed beside him. He bashed through the door with a cricket bat and found her body slumped on the magazine rack, mortally wounded. He carried her downstairs, weeping, praying, her blood pooling on the tiles. "Please, God, save her," he screamed. She died in his arms. The state told a radically different story. Prosecutor Gary Nell, a relentless legal predator known as the Bulldog, argued that the shooting was no accident It was, he claimed, the culmination of a heated argument. Neighbors testified to hearing a woman's terrified screams before the shots, cries that cut through the night and stopped only when the gunfire did. The forensic evidence, Nell argued, suggested that Steenkamp had fled to the toilet and locked the door behind her, a final barricade against a man enraged. The 4 bullets that struck her, head, arm, hip, were fired not in a blind panic, but with a deliberate tracking of movement. The most devastating evidence, however, was not a bullet casing or a blood spatter, but a collection of WhatsApp messages read aloud in the hush of the courtroom. Months earlier, Steenkamp had typed, "I'm scared of you sometimes, and how you snap at me, and how you will react to me." In the trial, those words hung in the air like smoke, painting a portrait of a controlling, volatile man and a relationship steeped in tension. The trial, which began in March 2014, was unlike any in South African history. For the first time, the full proceedings were broadcast live, an unfiltered spectacle that held a global audience captive. The defense, led by the shrewd Barry Rue, constructed a narrative of genuine mortal terror. Pistorius, they argued, was a lifelong sufferer of anxiety born of disability, a man whose entire life had been conditioned to perceive threat where others saw shadow. His constant companion, they said, was a deep-seated fear of violent crime, a fear not without foundation in a country with one of the highest rates of home invasion in the world. He had not intended to kill Riva. He had not even intended to kill an intruder. He had acted, they said, in a state of automatic self-defense, a disabled man drowning in a terror that overwhelmed reason. When Pistorius took the stand, the world watched a man unravel. For 5 days, he sobbed, vomited, and retched under cross-examination. At one point, Nell forced him to look at a forensic photograph of Steenkamp's shattered skull, shouting, "Look at it. Take responsibility for what you've done, Mr. Pistorius." He crumbled. Judge Thokozile Masipa, a black woman who had risen from poverty to become one of the country's most respected jurists, later described him as an evasive and very poor witness who contradicted himself repeatedly.